Good evening from New York. While President Obama went to Canada today to get started on the Clean Up America's Image Abroad part of his to-do list, his bigger problem, and our fifth story, cleaning up America's image in America. The president tonight with a new set of provocative quotes from his own party Speaker of the House about prosecuting the worst abuses and abusers from the Bush administration. President Obama spending 7 hours in the Canadian capital today, almost confusing Ottawa with Iowa, the only apparent misstep evident on his first foreign visit. Here at home, he and Democratic leaders still possibly at odds over whether to prosecute top Bush officials. A federal appeals court giving the White House until Wednesday to weigh in on the claim of executive privilege that Karl Rove is using to keep from testifying to Congress. White House counsel Greg Craig urging Congress to reach an agreement with Rove and other former Bush officials that might compel them to testify without involving the White House. Meantime, on Capitol Hill, Speaker Pelosi indicating she is open to the idea of prosecuting Rove and others, as well as to a truth commission to fully investigate abuses. In an interview with Rolling Stone magazine, the speaker was asked, quote, "Do you foresee a scenario in which senior members of the Bush administration are actually prosecuted?" Pelosi answering, "I think so. The American people deserve answers. Where we are now in terms of prosecution of White House staff is that we have charged them with contempt of Congress. We're talking about Harriet Miers, Josh Bolten, and Karl Rove." Next question. I'm talking more about the level of a Donald Rumsfeld, people who authorized torture and greenlighted the kidnapping and rendition of innocent people. The speaker's answers, "I did not like their policies, which is why we needed to win the election to get them out of power, but I don't know what the evidence is against them on any specific charge." When reminded that Dick Cheney had been tossed out at the end of the Nixon administration, only to return 25 years later, and asked about the danger of other Bush officials returning to office again, the speaker invoking Senator Leahy's Truth Commission proposal in her answer, quote, "We should have full examination. I'm not denying that. What Mr. Leahy is putting forward in terms of a Truth and Reconciliation Committee has always been helpful." Meantime, no less than Fredo himself, former Bush Attorney General and White House counsel Alberto Gonzales, saying today that he would cooperate with a Leahy Truth Commission with a catch. Mr. Gonzales saying he'd be willing to testify, quote, "so long as what we're talking about is the truth and things don't become politicized." Politicized. It's like hearing Alex Rodriguez admit to using steroids and twice gravely say, "I have to take my medicine." Time now to call in our own Howard Fineman, senior Washington correspondent at Newsweek magazine. Howard, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
Alberto Gonzales, to start with, to say that he'd cooperate with the Truth Commission as long as things don't become politicized. Am I supposed to file that under I for irony or CH for chutzpah?
Well, maybe O for outrageous. Look, justice is made by people, so politics can't be eliminated. Other departments of justice have had politics certainly in them, and at the top especially. But Gonzales's Justice Department took it to a whole new, grim, brazen level. You know, questionnaires, blood oaths, secret handshakes, you name it. Everybody was vetted for their politics all the way down into the guts of the department. That's what's different. That's what he denied under oath. And that's why he's in trouble here. Now, by saying that he'd be willing to talk to a commission, what he's really hoping for is some kind of use immunity where he'd go talk to this commission and then shield himself from any possible prosecution. Yet another tactic by defense lawyers.
The Rolling Stone interview with the speaker, does it seem that Speaker Pelosi, who says that she would determine what charge Congress is going to pursue against Bolton and Miers and Rove, that she's leaving all of her options open?
Yeah, I think the news is she's leaving her options open, but the news, based on talking to people around her and advisors to her just this afternoon after that story broke, is that she's very serious about this. The one part of it that Nancy Pelosi doesn't really want to mess with, I'm told, is the evidence about the war in Iraq. Now, the whole question of the build-up for the war, whether lies were told about that, and the reason for that is she believes that she and other Democrats on the Hill knew that it was a phony deal, said so at the time, and she doesn't think there's any percentage in going back over that particularly. But yes on torture, yes on possibly on the eavesdropping things, yes on Guantanamo, and certainly, especially yes on the question of coming before the Congress to testify. She is really determined on that point and seems very eager to try to haul Karl Rove and others into court for contempt.
But the wiggle room that she left for herself, and the point that her interviewer, Tim Dickinson, made in one of the follow-up questions was removing somebody from power, having their power expire, as it did in the case of everybody in the Bush administration, it really isn't enough, because the Dick Cheneys of the world are often young enough to return to power next time, even if it is a quarter of a century later. Is the history often repeats itself aspect of this in danger of being lost by political expediency?
No, I don't think so. I think that's what she said she would support a commission for, to go over that in detail. Ironically, George Bush, by manfully resisting Dick Cheney's efforts to fully exonerate Scooter Libby, at least kept Scooter Libby out of coming back again, that's for sure. But you're absolutely right. People like David Addington, Dick Cheney's Dick Cheney, remember him? And that whole cast of characters, I'm sure, will be angling around for influence among all those governors that you were just showing on the air earlier, who are going to be running in 2012. So there's a political usefulness in doing what Pelosi's thinking of doing. And I have to say, I'm surprised that she is as eager to pursue this as she apparently is. I thought she was going to just leave it to John Conyers and the Judiciary Committee. No, I think Pelosi really wants to get after it on everything except the war in Iraq sales job.
Governor Palin, my name is Addington. It's on the card here. Last question about Rove and the negotiations over whether or not he would go and finally testify to Congress. Immunity. What would he trade for immunity? What bigger fish could he have than Karl Rove?
Well, he's a pretty big one. I agree. I think the other one here is Gonzales. I think it's hard to overstate the anger and contempt people have for Alberto Gonzales in his various performances on the Hill, his testimony in which he was glossing over everything, to put it charitably, that was going on in his department. They would like to bring Gonzales to account, and if Rove can help them do that, I think that's what they want. But as you mentioned earlier, Greg Craig, the White House counsel, doesn't want this confrontation, because ironically, if Rove were to go into court and assert the executive privilege claim against the Congress, it's not at all clear that the Obama White House would object. They might allow him to do that, because it's an unwritten rule between presidents and presidencies that you don't do anything to limit the power of future presidents. Greg Craig doesn't want that situation to develop, which is why he wants a deal. But I'm not sure there'll be a deal, because Congress wants to make a point here, whatever the White House wants.
Howard Fineman of MSNBC and Newsweek. As always, Howard, great thanks.
Thank you, Keith.